Hi everyone. First off, I hope you're all doing well and keeping safe during this insane time. I know I am, especially with a baby on the way, you gotta be careful. Anyway, without delaying any further, let's get into the topic of today's video. Who is Iron Lord Felwinter and what is his lie? By now, most of you will have acquired the returning shotgun from Destiny 1, Felwinter's Lie. But what you may not know is the history of the weapon and of the man who wielded it. Let's start at the beginning. Throughout this video, I'll be quoting excerpts from different lore tabs from the game. To understand the story of Lord Felwinter, we need to go back to when he was a just recently resurrected Risen. Here's an excerpt from the new lore book, The Liar, The Beginning, Part 1. A risen Exo stood, dazed, in the middle of what looked like a giant library. He'd never been here before. As far as he could remember, he'd never been anywhere before. He couldn't remember anything, and all he had to go on was the name given to him by a strange silver drone. A name he didn't even recognize. Felwinter. All around him were giant gilded shelves, half of them broken, littered with tattered books and cracked cylindrical cases. He stepped on a book and broke its spine as he walked. The little drone followed him. "I know you don't trust me," it said, "but you have no choice. Who else have you got?" "I don't know," Felwinter said. He thought for a second. "I don't know anything." "Exactly, so you should listen to me." The soaring height of the ceilings made the building feel like an open space. Remnants of an old fresco loomed over his head, cracked and faded. Maybe it was beautiful once. Felwinter trudged through the empty fog of his memory, trying to understand how he got there. "You're stubborn, obviously. But if we stay here long enough, you're gonna die." Felwinter tried to tune out the little drone's voice. He needed to think. He picked his way through the oceans of books, but he stopped dead when an explosion rocked the building. He looked up. Dust fell from the faded ceiling in clouds. "See?" the drone said. "This is what I mean. We have to go. A place like this isn't safe." Beside them, a computer terminal, one that looked broken beyond repair, flickered to life. The building shuddered again. A warbling female voice came on over the PA system, crackling and distant. "Site-wide lockdown initiated." Then, a reassuring male voice, smooth, but made eerie by the warped quality of the recording. "All library patrons, please report to the nearest emergency station. If you require assistance, an attendant can help you at the reception desk." The recording cut off, and the building shook again. Metal shutters began to descend over the windows, groaning from age and disuse. Something big hit the building, and debris showered down over them. "We should hide," the drone said, and Felwinter had no choice but to agree. They fled the library. Outside, crouched in the rubble of another building, they watched together as the library was crushed under a torrent of what looked to Felwinter like falling stars. "See?" the drone said. Already, Felwinter has a terrible start to his new life. The falling stars turned out to be old warsats, being thrown out of orbit by some unseen force, and were directly targeting Felwinter. After 7 deaths, he and his ghost were able to find shelter in a cave nearby. They continued to travel together, dodging warsats and other more natural enemies along the way. During this time, Felwinter gives his ghost a name, Felspring, to match his own, and maybe even as a dig towards the ghost, for giving him a name he always felt was never his to begin with. Just over 6 months of travelling later, they come across the first other Risen they have ever seen, and another exo at that. During the meeting, they're assaulted by robotic combat frames, and Felwinter discovers Rasputin is after him, but he still has no concept of what the Warmind is or of most of the world around him. This new discovery sparks a thirst for more knowledge of his assailant, which leads him to discover the first Seraph bunker, one of many he and Felspring break into over the coming years. Though, I should say break into isn't exactly the right terminology, as they find out that Felwinter has even more of a connection to Rasputin than they first realised. During a sweep of the bunker, he puts his hand on one of the control panels, and it immediately comes to life, as does everything else in the bunker. We skip ahead a little bit here. Felwinter got quite good at running from Rasputin, but he still found them wherever they went, hurling war sats and combat frames at them at every opportunity. So they decided that a fortified home base would be better than making a new shoddy camp every time they wanted to rest. They had found the schematics to the perfect place, in one of the old Seraph bunkers they had raided. So they set out for the mountain, which was currently in the hands of a warlord named Castor. To cut a short story even shorter, he shot Castor's ghost and shoved Castor off a cliff. The time since his resurrection in the library had taught him the value of the direct approach, and not wasting any time. However, he still retained a semblance of justice, which would affect a very important decision to come. After taking residence on the mountain, a representative from the village below came with an offering for Castor, and instead found Felwinter. Every month, Arthur would come up the mountain with an offering of anything from weapon parts to ammunition, and Felwinter would meet her on the way, speaking more and more with her each time. On the 7th and final time she made her trip up the mountain, the conversation they had would change the course of the rest of his life. "You could really help us," Arthur said softly. "All those Golden Age technologies you know so much about, we could live a whole different life." Felwinter stood completely still, looking out over the horizon. "I can't," he said. She looked at him, trying to read his expression, and then looked sharply away. They stood in silence for a while. "You know," she said, pointing down the mountain, "warlords have been crashing through our village for ages, stepping on us, tearing up everything we plant, tearing down everything we build." "I'm not a warlord," Felwinter said quietly. "Sure," she said, "but you're like them. You get 1,000 second chances. You get to live in a big fortress on top of a mountain. What do you think it's like for us? What do you think it's like to have the sky constantly falling down on you?" Felwinter stared at her. Arthur crossed her arms. "It must be nice," she said. Her expression softened. Not for him, but for herself, for her people. Not to have to worry. The next month, Arthur didn't come to meet him, nor the month after that. Without even realizing it, Arthur, annoyed as she was with his seeming indifference to her people, had touched upon the very reason for his withdrawal from the outside world. It was in part due to the danger he would bring upon anyone he happened to be near, but also due to the fear, and I guess more importantly, the exhaustion that living like he had in his early days had caused him. Yet again, a chance conversation spurs him into action, and the next time we see Felwinter, he's diving into bunkers again, after spending such a long time hiding away on his mountain. During a sweep of one particular bunker, Felspring poses a question. How did the humans of the Golden Age expand so rapidly in the system? What technology was it that allowed them to terraform places like Titan? So begins the search for what would later be known as SIDDHARTHA, though they didn't know it yet. Before we move on, there's two very important passages in the new lore book that we need to talk about. SIDDHARTHA Golem. Amygdala Votive Grasp. AICOM. Rasputin. Assets. Golem. Interrogative. Immediate action order. This is a subtle assets imperative. No human review. No AICOM review. Secure Autarch. Initiate SIDDHARTHA Golem upload at DSC-342 to assess integrity of moral structures. Stand by for criteria. Under Passage. Obelisk. Side reel. If Namno Sonda is Ivory. If Hammurabi is active and passes human review under context Turing. If Duryodhana is in failure and passes AICOM review under context IDIS. Set Spectrum certification to Sambaragdine. Else, stand by for contingent action order. Set Spectrum certification to Amaranthine. Initiate human review unless tactical morality is built at midnight. Experience is the teacher of all things. Stop, stop, stop. Coronary Mirror Shear. AICOM. Rasputin. Assets. ForceCon. Imperative. Immediate action order. SIDDHARTHA Golem detected in Sector OR41-S. Reactivation conditions unknown. SIDDHARTHA Golem identified with O energy signature. Automated remote asset seizure failed. Automated remote injection of wet web payload Helminth failed. Automated remote injection of hardware payload Catacomb failed. I am invoking Absalon Knife. Upon execution, all affected assets resume long hold at midnight exigent. And weep the more, because I weep in vain. Stop, stop, stop. The Discovery. For weeks, Felwinter and Felspring searched out Seraph bunkers, trying to find remnants of the technology that built a Golden Age utopia. One night, they camped in a Seraph bunker and spent hours poring over transcripts of old code. "This is weird," Felspring said, and projected a display of a long string of code. "Look, in the Golden Age, Rasputin executes a protocol called SIDDHARTHA Golem. No idea what it is. Some kind of knowledge gathering. It gathers a bunch of transcripts, conversations with humans, recordings of music, a huge database of literature." She whirred and the projection flipped through thousands of words of code, then stopped again. "Here. Early Dark Age. A submind in old Russia says SIDDHARTHA Golem is active and gone rogue." Her voice dropped. "Around the time I found you." Felwinter studied the code. It was almost like sight reading. Not quite effortless, but like a native tongue he'd forgotten. "But what is SIDDHARTHA Golem?" he murmured. Felspring zipped back and forth through the code again at a nervous, stuttering pace, then stopped it. Then scrolled through the code again. Stopped. Scrolled again. Stopped. "Wait." Her voice quivered just a little. "See that? This is the first time SIDDHARTHA Golem is mentioned. It..." She paused, then went on, quieter. "It says initiate SIDDHARTHA Golem upload at DSC-342. A beat. DSC Felwinter." Felwinter was silent, thinking, uncomprehending. "DSC?" he asked quietly. "Deep Stone Crypt." She was almost whispering now. SIDDHARTHA Golem was an exo. Felwinter looked down at himself, at his hands. He turned them over, studying the worn metal of his palms. The silence filled the bunker nearly to bursting. To Felwinter, it felt like years until either of them spoke again. The whole time, Felspring watched him, frozen in the air. "He's you," she whispered. Not gonna lie. Get it? Lie. I'm a dad, I'm allowed to make those jokes. This part gave me goosebumps. For years, we've always had questions about Felwinter, but one of the biggest ones was answered right here. But I'll get to that a little bit later in the video. Another time jump here, and Felwinter meets with Lord Timur of the Iron Lords. Through him, he learns more about them, and the name of the technology he'd been searching for this whole time, Siva. He stands before the Iron Lords, being accepted into their ranks, his mountain changing to become, and be dubbed, Felwinter Peak. After many battles, eliminating warlords with final deaths, something the Iron Decree, a set of rules the Iron Lords live by, did not allow him to do. He eventually is able to uncover the site of the Siva replication chamber. However, the ease of his discovery unnerves Felspring. But while Felwinter shares her concerns, he pushes for the Iron Lords to go after Siva, secretly believing he can communicate with Rasputin and get him to understand what they're doing in a way no one else could. Unfortunately, we all know how the story ends. The doomed raid on the Siva replication chamber all but completely wipes out the Iron Lords, leaving only Saladin and Aphrodite alive. It's here Rasputin, after the trust we have built with him, decides to let us in on his greatest secret. It's here we finally find out the actual truth behind Felwinter's real lie.
He's telling a story. In a time of great prosperity, a tyrant king sent his son to live among the people and learn their ways. He did so for many years, until a great calamity befell the kingdom. In the aftermath, the tyrant's son was changed. The tyrant's son turned away from his father and became a warrior. The tyrant chased his son across fields and mountains and oceans. He said, "If I can't have my son, then no one shall." In the end, the tyrant used his son's love of the people against him. He promised him a miraculous technology that could rebuild the kingdom. When his son came to claim it, he unleashed a plague upon him. His son was destroyed. And the tyrant looked upon his tyranny and wept. Is Rasputin... is he talking about himself? I think the tyrant's son... Guardian, can you read me? There you are. Comms cut out completely. You're in a really old part of the bunker. The signal's terrible. This place is like a time capsule. Where are we? This looks like the casing of an old safety AI, but marked with Rasputin's symbol. These transcripts suggest his original code was for a sort of emergency response system from pre-Golden Age space stations. Checking oxygen levels, fuel, that kind of thing. Clovis Bray took a safety AI and turned it into an interplanetary defense system with sentience. And Rasputin kept all this, almost like a scrapbook of his past. A way to remember his roots. And he showed it to us. When did he learn to be so sentimental? Wish Zavala could see this.
The tyrant in this story is Rasputin, having been referred to as one in the past. The son is, of course, Felwinter. When he mentions becoming a warrior and a miraculous technology that could save the kingdom, he's talking about Felwinter becoming arisen and Siva. We see that there is a sense of shame for his actions, pity, and even possibly sadness that he effectively destroyed the only possible thing that could ever come close to being family. This marks a massive change in Rasputin. He's never been this open with us before, perhaps with any other living being. Not only is he showing us his greatest shame, but also his own roots, his childhood, if you will. It's clear he's grown so much over the years, perhaps in equal parts due to our and Anna's interventions, but also due to the SIDDHARTHA golem he had sent out into the world to learn more about humanity. Whatever the case, we are gifted Felwinter's lie, and we find out what this is really all about. We can't tell anyone. Do you know how powerful a war mind is? I know you do. We've been running from one for centuries. Not just powerful either, intelligent, storing every secret of the Golden Age, from the Traveler's arrival right up until the collapse. Imagine if people realized you had all of that buried somewhere in your head. Just imagine. So we can't. We can't tell anyone. You're something totally new. Part Guardian. Part War Mind. There's no one else like you. I think that's why the Traveler sent me to you. But other people won't understand it. And Rasputin will never, ever stop coming after you. After us. Ever. So it's just us, Felwinter. Just you and me. This is our lie. And ours alone. Lord Felwinter is like no other Exo we've ever seen before. Perhaps one of only a few. The mix of AI and human intelligence. A walking, talking war mind and guardian with a heart and soul of its own. It's pretty surreal, huh? When he was risen, Rasputin believed he had gone rogue and thought to destroy him. It's not exactly clear, but apart from thinking he might be a threat to humanity and that one of his assets was malfunctioning, Rasputin might have felt a bit of jealousy that Felwinter would be able to go out and have agency in the world, while Rasputin was stuck behind steel walls. Felwinter went on to help change the world. When he met the Iron Lords, he truly felt that they would bring the world into a better state than it was currently in. He may have done a lot of questionable things out of operational necessity, but he always acted with an innate sense of justice right until the very end. He modelled for us the true beginnings of what it means to be a Guardian. And that's it. This turned out to be a little bit longer than I had anticipated, so I had to edit out quite a lot of stuff. But it was important to make sure that I cover every important part of this story. I'm hoping to do a longer form video in the future about Lord Felwinter, and other characters as well. Maybe even the Iron Lords as a group. But that's gonna be quite a ways down the road. I start a new job shortly, so I'll have less time to work on these, but I am making them a priority, so it shouldn't be too long between videos. Anyway, thank you for watching. If you'd like to leave a like and comment on what you thought about the video, it would be incredibly appreciated. As well as subscribing and hitting the bell next to it, so you can always be notified whenever I post a video. Of course, the fact that you viewed it is enough for me. I cannot thank everyone enough for all the support. It's been a pleasure. I'm the Ice Warrior 209, and I'll catch you next time.